Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, the podcast where pet parents, pet guardians, and pet professionals come together to dive into real issues in dog parenting. From controversial training methods to sensitive health topics, we're getting raw and real about what it means to care for our canine companions. Join us every Wednesday for unfiltered conversations, expert insights, and personal stories that will make you laugh, cry, and grow as a pet parent. No topic is off limits and no question goes unanswered. You won't get one perspective here. You'll get them all because every dog is different and every human is too. You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Straight Up Dog Talk or by visiting www.straightupdogtalk.com. Tune in from any of your favorite podcast platforms. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk. I'm Em, and we are back again this week with another amazing guest. This week we have Lauren Schaefer from Choose Wisely Training, and we are going to talk about state laws and dogs. How are you doing today, Lauren?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. You and I always have really amazing conversations behind the scenes, and we've gotten into some pretty deep, nerdy science holes before, but it's so important to share those conversations and that information with the listeners, and so that's why you're here today. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you, where you're from, what you do, all the things.
Sure. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Lauren from Choose Wisely Training, as Em said, and I've been a dog trainer for the past couple of years, local in the Pittsburgh area and virtually. I've been pretty active working with a few different rescues, including Cross Your Paws, Animal Friends, the Beaver Humane Society, and recently MAD, Malinois, and Dutch Shepherd Rescue. I have a couple classes that I've taken along the way, including University of Washington Applied Animal Behavior, Susan Friedman Behavior Works, and then legs through Kim Brophy.
I forgot we both have the family dog mediation. That's why we always nerd out together.
Exactly.
It's such a cool program. Let's talk about state laws. And I bet you I probably don't even know all of the ones that we're going to talk about. But Lauren has come up with a list of state laws that might not be applicable to your state, but this is exactly why you need to research your state laws. So let's start with rabies because it does vary state to state. So why don't you just talk about what the overall general law, because I think it's like 3 years for most places, but it is 1 year in other places. So I'll let you just tell everybody a little bit about that and then we'll move through your list.
That sounds wonderful. One of the things I noted first and foremost is only a few states, I think 13, will do a medical exemption for rabies vaccines. Pennsylvania, where I live, is not one of them, unfortunately. Puppies have to be vaccinated at 3 months of age, and you have to have a rabies vaccine tag on your dog's license. I thought that was really interesting just because some dogs possibly would do better not to have a rabies vaccine. Depending on the animal and the health and the state you live in, definitely check out whether or not you can get that exemption.
Just because you said it, in Iowa, we don't have licenses for our dogs. That is a thing that I did not know other states had. You don't have to have a license to have a dog here in Iowa. So can you talk a little bit about what that is and if there's an annual fee and all of the things that go along with that?
Sure. I didn't realize that it was state by state either. So in Pennsylvania, the dog has to have a license. I renew mine yearly because my dog is spayed. It's like $1 off. It's a cheap thing. It's like $6. You can also, I believe, do a lifetime license that I probably should look into at this point just because I plan to have her the rest of her life. I know seniors get a discount and spay and neuter is also discounted. So I didn't realize that not every state had licenses. That's interesting that you don't.
No, and when I lived in Texas, we didn't have to have one there either. And when I lived in Florida, I didn't have to have one there either.
Wow.
I think California, you have to have one. I'm pretty sure you had mentioned it before, and I was like, oh, that's a weird thing. I don't know anything about this. So it's like license plate tags for your dogs, basically. You just pay an annual fee and you're good to go. Does that mean they're registered with the state or the city? How does that work?
So ours are by county. Every year I have to send it into the county chair. There's also like a dog warden. Every county has a dog warden that you have to pay to get your dog licensed. I'd be really curious. I didn't think to look that up for state by state basis.
Interesting. What about microchips?
They're not required in PA. My dog is microchipped and she also has a 5 GPS collar just because I'm one of those crazy people that if my dog gets out, I want to be able to find her. The Mad Rescue I work with, they also provide 6 months of service with the 5 FI collar. So depending on the rescue, depending on where you would get your dog, a collar may also come with at least 6 months of service, if not longer.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that there were rescues out there providing FI collars for dogs. We have a FI collar too because I am also that person. He is microchipped and both my dogs are microchipped, but only one, the crazy one, has a FI collar because the other one won't go anywhere. He's too much of a potato. What else do you have on your list?
One of the things I also wanted to talk about, I'm just going to put it out there, is PA just had a law that when there is a restraining order, you can include your dog in it because if the person who is abusing you would have come after you, likely they'll come after your dog as well. So that's something I just wanted to call out for everybody, to check your state laws. And if you are getting a restraining order against somebody, your dog normally can be included in it.
It's a new one for me. I had no idea that you could do that. And I think that that is incredible because we had Ruger's Rescues on before, and that's a shelter in California where she specifically works with homeless and women who need shelter and dogs in those situations. I think that it's amazing that there are resources out there for people who are in situations like that they need to get out of to protect their dogs as well as protect them. That's really interesting. I would have never thought about needing to put a restraining order out on my dog. I've never had to put one out on myself. So I guess I never would have even thought to put one on my dog. But I think that's a really important thing to know because anything we can do to protect our dog or cats in situations like that is really, really important. Do you know anything about the process?
No, but I was going to say that just became a law in PA. I know that some places pets are considered property, so there are different limitations depending on the state, whether or not the animal is considered a being or property. But you would have to look into your state, and definitely if you do get a restraining order filed, include your pet, because a lot of abusers do go after animals to keep that person in the relationship with them, unfortunately.
That's really sad. Another one that I learned about last year was when somebody dies, you need to assign your animal to somebody in your will in certain states.
Okay.
Because if you don't, and the cat or dog is considered property, there can actually be a legal battle over the pet, which is insane to think that that would happen while people are grieving and going through the loss of a person, that there would be a fight or a battle for custody of the pet. But
Right.
there was actually a woman that I was following, she's in Canada, I believe, who lost the dog that her boyfriend had given her to his sisters through legal battle, which was just wild. Isn't that sad? It's so sad to me. It's so sad.
I agree. I always tell everybody I'm going to have a plan for my dog, who's going to get my dog if anything happens, because my dog is a special case and a little bit high maintenance. So I'm not going to leave that to chance.
No, same for me. I have a plan for Fitz. If I go before Fitz does, then somebody special has to take him because he's a lot and not everybody can deal with that. I know for sure my parents are like, well, we'll take Toby, but even just dog sitting, my parents are like, we can help with Toby, but he's just a lot and he's a special guy. What else do you have on your list?
So this one's really relevant right now in Pittsburgh and a lot of other states. Dogs cannot be left outside for more than 30 minutes in any temperature below 32 degrees. And this law applies to both tethered and untethered dogs.
That's really interesting. So left outside, tethered or untethered. So does that mean you can't play outside with your dog for 30 minutes?
So if you're outside with them, it's okay. Anything below 32, you have to be very careful with your dog just because they can start showing signs of the cold. It's called Lieber's Law, which was passed in 2017 to strengthen animal protection.
There are so many states, especially Iowa, gets cold. And I think the other day it was like -9 degrees.
Wow.
It was so cold and it was windy and Fitz didn't want to be outside. So we have come up with other alternatives. But there are people that just leave dogs outside, chained to trees, loose on their property, and they don't have somewhere that they can go. They don't have a structure or a safe place that they can go into. And there are dogs that die because of that. It's awful to know that.
I remember growing up, it didn't sit right with me then, but I was a kid, I was in elementary school, that there was a dog named Penny that was always tied up outside. Any weather, she had a little house, little chain, and I think things were a little bit different back then, but it just never felt right that this dog only had a chain for her whole life.
And extreme heat too. It doesn't even have to be
Hmm.
extreme heat, but just weather in general. You have to be careful because the dogs need to have water. They need to have a safe place to be warm or a safe place to be cool where they're not directly in the sun or they're not directly in the cold because you're worried about a range of things, right? Anything
Right.
from dehydration to starvation to frostbite, freezing to death, overheating, and dogs can die from heat stroke. I will never understand the people who get pets and then just chain them up in front of their house or in their backyard and then that's it. And then they don't feed them or water them on a regular basis. What's the point of that? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm so glad that there are so many more laws about animal cruelty out there and what we can do to report that kind of stuff. Do you have
Yeah.
any specific animal cruelty laws in Pennsylvania?
We do, and it seems like they're a little bit subjective. That today, this morning, there was a case that was being posted by my rescue. A dog was being terribly abused, and I think the cops were on the scene. Our rescue was trying to take this dog. I'm not sure if we did, but I think the state police got involved. So I think she is now out of that owner's custody. Sometimes it's at the discretion of the officer, which, depending on the officer, you may or may not get some action.
Unfortunately, that is the case in most states, is that it's kind of dependent on if the officer that you get is lenient towards the animals or not, which can be 50-50, right? And
Right.
when you file a complaint for animal control or anything like that, you really are at the mercy of the state. Do you guys have any animal control specific laws there?
If you your dog loose, and somebody can obviously report you, so you get several tickets. Dogs obviously have to be contained. I think I just read somewhere that it can't be over a 6 foot leash. I'm gonna have to double check on that a little bit because I bring my dog out on a long leash sometimes at a local park. For the city, it looks like a dog leash can't be over 6 feet in length. The county looks like it has to be a visible leash at all times. So even city versus county laws look like they're a little bit different. I don't live in the city of Pittsburgh, so I would say that as long as I have a visible leash, like I said, I use a long leash at a local park. I was wondering if I was in compliance with leash laws or not.
We have a leash law here in Iowa, but I don't know what it is because I've never really worried about it. So let's see what Iowa's leash law is. Okay, so in Iowa, where I live, wow, this is super basic, guys. A leash is required when the dog is off the owner's property or when entering or exiting an off-leash park. A leash is not required in a motor vehicle, in a veterinary hospital, licensed kennel, pet shop, or animal shelter when the dog is wearing an off-leash park permit tag and is in an off-leash area, or when the dog is trained and used by a government agency and accompanied by a handler. That's it. Those are the laws.
Which is crazy.
When the dog is in a veterinary hospital? What? Your dog should definitely be on a leash in the veterinary hospital, guys. Do not let your dog loose in the veterinary hospital. That's like ready to wreak havoc in an environment that I don't know. What? Who in the world? You should definitely, in a kennel, if they're in a kennel, the dog should be in the kennel, right? And if
Right.
they're moving your dog from the play area to the kennel, the leash should be on the dog. I worked in kennels,
Right.
guys. Those are the rules in the kennel. What the heck? And if they're in a pet shop, they don't have to have a leash. So I can just go into Petco and just let my dog go wild. That is unbelievable. I am going to have to, I feel like I'm going to have to do something about this because this is insane. All right, let me look here. There's a different thing that says, this is chapter 23 Code of Ordinances. Maybe this says something that's a little bit different, and I really hope so. As far as restraint and confinement, they cannot be tethered to a fixed object. Wow, this is really insane. Okay, so it says no animal may be tethered to a fixed object unless chains, ropes, or leashes are placed or attached so they cannot become entangled with any other animal or object from extending over an object or edge that could result in strangulation or injury of the animal, and shall be of proficient length in proportion to the size of the animal, but no less than 12 feet to allow the animal proper exercise and unlimited access to adequate food, water, and easy adequate shelter, as well as protection from the elements. Such tethering shall be located as to not allow animals to trespass on public property or private property belonging to others, nor in such a manner as to cause harm or danger to persons, the chained or tethered animal, or other animals. The chain or tether must have a swivel on both ends. So apparently you can tether a dog in Iowa. There are rules about it, but you can still tether a dog, which is
sad.
It is sad. You do have to have a breeding permit in Iowa if you're going to breed dogs. I didn't know that until recently.
I didn't know that either.
Do you guys have to have a breeding permit?
I would assume so, but there's a lot of Amish that I'm wondering if they have to have that or if they get like a loophole pass.
We have Amish communities here too, and I don't know. They're kind of in society, but they're without society, so I don't know.
I think they get some loopholes, yeah.
Yeah.
Another crazy law I had is dogs in Pennsylvania are considered personal property. So the court would treat them as property. In a divorce, you would have visitation or custody rights with your dog. There is an exception that's called Barney's Rule, but dogs are considered marital assets and subject to equitable distribution.
Wow. So you could literally have a huge divorce debate over your dog.
Yeah. But if I ever got divorced, I could totally see that happening because my dog is like my child.
I don't know. I guess in every relationship I've ever been in, I'm like, these are my dogs. And I've never had an issue with that. When I got divorced, I had to leave one dog behind, but that dog was gifted to my husband. So that was technically Brutus was his dog, but Cajun and Fiona were my dogs. And there was no argument, no contestment, nothing about that.
Yeah.
I could see where that could become a problem though. I've heard of cases where people have shared custody of the dog. So I guess I'm not really that surprised that it happens, but also you would have to be, that's like co-parenting, right? You would have to be okay and at least chill and on good terms with the other person in order to co-parent your dog with someone else. That's pretty adulty. You'd have to be very adult in order to do that.
Exactly. And I don't know if it would be legally enforced, so it would have to be you two getting along, meeting to exchange the dog for a set period of time and then getting the dog back after that time's over.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I definitely would not be, this would not be good with that. He would not want to be separated from me. That could potentially be really hard on animals too.
Emma would like it because Chris sometimes gets her Chick-fil-A or some little treat that I normally don't go get her a drive-through treat. So Emma might be okay with that.
Okay, I'm scrolling through our laws now here, and I just came across the wildest law. Disposing of and or giving animals away or selling animals. It is unlawful to give any live animal, bird, or fish away as a prize.
Interesting.
Yeah, so when you go to the fair and you play that little ping pong game where you throw the ball into the fish bowl, and if you get the fish bowl with the fish in it, you win the fish. I think that's actually illegal
exactly
in
what
Iowa.
I was thinking about.
That is wild. Definitely, we should not be giving away cats and dogs and birds and things like that. But fish? I mean, it literally says fish.
My mom, back in like the 70s, won a descented skunk from a fair. Yeah, so we've come a long ways, but fish I still feel like shouldn't be given away as a prize. Or hermit crabs, you always see them sitting in the sun on the summer day at the fair.
It makes sense to me now. My little kid brain, back in the days, I won plenty of fish at the fair. But now I'm like, oh, wait, that was illegal. So that's really interesting. Here's another interesting one, too, that's under the same category. It is unlawful to dispose of or offer for sale any live animal, bird, or fish on public property. So it is illegal to be in a Walmart parking lot selling puppies.
Interesting. At the rescue, you're not allowed to adopt a dog just anywhere. It has to be through the rescue. And we have cuddle events. I think we have a special license for that now, but we can't just go have a booth and be like, okay, we're adopting dogs. There are some rules for rescues too, thankfully, because I think you want to make sure everybody's vetted before you would get a dog, even through a rescue.
I completely agree. I just think that it's crazy because how many years have people been selling puppies out of the back of their pickup trucks in front of the grocery store or Walmart or whatever. So I actually find it really helpful to know that now because I am the person that will call animal control and report those people because
I love it.
I don't want that happening. I don't want that happening. I'm going to jump back for a minute to the leash laws because I just came across one here that I didn't see before. So this says that if If a chain or tether is attached, it must be attached to a properly fitting collar or harness worn by the animal. Choke and prong collars are prohibited in Iowa if they're
Wow.
tethered,
Okay.
which is good because I can tell you when I was a vet tech, how many dogs I saw come in that had prong collars embedded in their neck because they were chained to a
Jeez.
tree and left out there with a prong collar on. Not pretty, not something you want to see for
I can
sure.
only
So I'm glad to
imagine.
know
Yeah.
that that's illegal because that is also something that I will report to animal control. I have no bones about it, guys. I do not care. I will report. If I think that you are puppy milling or that you're mistreating an animal or that something's going on that shouldn't be going on, I will report. So you do not want to be my neighbor.
You see a dog in a hot car, I've called 9 on that.
Oh, me too. I actually found out in Iowa it's legal to break the window.
Okay. Interesting.
If there's a dog in a car and the vehicle is off and it's over a certain degree, I don't remember what the temperature degree is, but you can break the window and not get in trouble with the police in Iowa.
Okay. I've called the local police and they actually told me to call 911. I didn't see if 911 had come. I saw the owner come get the dog, so hopefully he was okay. Don't leave your dog in a hot car. If it's over 60 degrees, I think they say don't leave your dog in the car.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. And I will break your window if you do. I'm not joking. I will do it. I'm not going to play around with that kind of stuff. That's abuse. I'm sorry, but it is. It's abuse. And that's just like leaving a small child in the car. You wouldn't leave a kid in the car without the air conditioning on. Children have died from that. Animals have died from that. It's not okay. I'm going to break the window. Sorry.
Exactly. And dogs don't sweat like we do. They only sweat through their pads of their feet, so they don't regulate heat as well as we do.
Yeah. What else do you have on your list?
Dangerous dog laws. Any dog that bites or attacks a human being would be immediately confined in a primary enclosure by a designated employee by the Department of Health, a state dog warden, or an employee of the Department of Agriculture, an animal control officer, or a police officer. All dogs that do bite a person have to be isolated for a minimum of 10 days to determine the medical results of the offending dog's confinement, meaning rabies test. Every dog would be wearing a muzzle, on a leash, and under physical constraint by a responsible person.
Okay. Ours says a potentially dangerous animal is defined as one who meets one or more of the following condition as determined by the manager or manager's designee. Any animal that, when provoked, inflicts an injury on a human that does not require medical treatment, injures a domestic animal, or chases or approaches a person upon streets, sidewalks, or any public grounds in a menacing fashion or apparent attitude of attack. Or any specific animal with known propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack when unprovoked, cause injury, or threaten the safety of humans or other domestic animals. So that sounds pretty similar.
Right. Going a little bit further, registration fee for a dog deemed dangerous is $1,000 for a calendar year for the life of the dog. If your dog does get deemed dangerous, then you have to also spay or neuter the dog, microchip the dog, be compliant with a court-ordered restitution. Once your dog is deemed dangerous, there's a lot of rules you have to follow. If a dog leaves the area, it has to be muzzled by a substantial chain or leash and under the physical restraint of a responsible person. And if a person doesn't enforce these rules, they could be found guilty of a criminal offense to a first-degree misdemeanor.
Wow, that's crazy. $1,000
a year
for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
That is so crazy. I'm looking up licensing in Iowa to see if there's some kind of licensing. But all I'm finding is that they have to have a valid rabies tag when off the owner's property and be able to show the vaccination tag and certificate if animal control requests. But that's literally it. I know that you can buy a permit for the dog park here because we did that when I first got Fitz, which was part of our reactivity journey, was we went to dog parks. But you have to pay for an annual permit. And it's funny because they say it's an annual permit, but the park is actually closed when the temperature hits a certain things, basically from November-ish, December-ish, until whenever it warms up in the spring, you cannot use the park because it's closed. Here's an interesting one, which I think that this should be a law in every county. In the county that I live in, it's illegal for dogs to run at large, and a dog that injures or kills livestock is responsible for damages. We're a farm state, though. Livestock is kind of a common thing, not necessarily where I live, but right outside of Cedar Rapids and right on the edge of Cedar Rapids, there are plenty of farms. A dog getting loose and hurting cows or causing a horse to have to be put down or attacking sheep or ducks or anything. I'm sure that happens around here. I've never heard of
Right.
it, but I'm sure that it does.
Yeah, in Allegheny County, finding another law, that's the county I live in Pennsylvania, it is illegal to place poison or a harmful substance where a dog can easily eat it. That I've heard, unfortunately, that done by some people. So it is good to know that that is an illegal thing.
What about bite laws in Pennsylvania? We have really tough laws here for bites.
So it is the owner liable for all bite-related medical expenses, additional damages like pain and suffering or lost wages. The victim must provide the dog had a history of viciousness or the owner was negligent. And the owner may be deemed negligent if they fail to exercise reasonable care, such as failing to keep the dog on a leash.
Iowa law says owners are liable for all damages caused by the pet if the dog hurts or kills a domestic animal or attacks or attempts to bite a person. There are two important exceptions. If someone directly contributes to their own injury by committing an unlawful act, for example, trespassing, attacking, or injuring the dog, then they cannot recover damages from the dog's owner. And if a dog has rabies, its owner isn't automatically responsible for attacks committed by their pet. The owner is only liable if they knew about their pet's condition and failed to take steps to deal with it. This says, in other words, if a victim sues over an attack by a rabid dog, they must prove that the attack only happened because of the owner's negligence. So I would hope that you would know that your dog has rabies if it's attacking people. But like you said, if it's a law, it probably happened, which is sad and a little bit scary.
It's terrible.
They'll put dogs in quarantine for bite here. And then if the dog tests positive for rabies or is deemed a threat, then they'll just euthanize the dog and you won't get to say goodbye to your dog. At that point, animal control just steps in, they take your dog, and then they make the decision.
But it looks like if a dog would attack another dog or a person through intentional or reckless or negligent conduct, the owner can be charged with a misdemeanor of the second degree. A misdemeanor of the first degree would be the owner would be charged if their dog seriously injures or kills a person.
Okay, so those sound pretty similar too.
Yeah, this is getting pretty intense right now.
I'm going to add one more on there before we change it to maybe less intense laws. In Iowa, it is illegal to abandon, abuse, or fight dogs.
Okay.
What about Pennsylvania?
I'm 90% sure. Let me double check dog fight laws, but I'd be hard pressed if it wasn't. I don't even know if it comes up. I'm getting dog bite laws, dog attack laws. I'm not even getting dog fight laws. So that sounds like it would fall under the dangerous dog law that owners can be fined up to $5,000. The owner's dog can be confiscated and euthanized. There could be more severe consequences if the person is seriously injured or if somebody is killed.
Okay. All right. So let's do one that's less. Do you have a restriction on how many dogs you can own at one time? Iowa does not.
It looks like you can have 4 dogs and 1 cat, or 3 dogs, or 3 cats and 2 dogs. So it looks like a household in Pennsylvania can have up to 5 animals. And that might be Pittsburgh.
I remember, I think it was 4 dogs. When I lived in Texas, you couldn't have more than 4. Now, that could have changed since I've been there, but I remember I had 3 dogs, and I wouldn't want more than 3 dogs. I don't know how you could have more than 3 dogs working full time, but I had cats too, and a bunch of small animals, lizards and things too. But I remember feeling like that was like a lot. But I just think that it's crazy that there's no limit in Iowa. You can have as many dogs as you want. That's like
Which is
asking for
interesting,
hoarding.
because I did see something earlier today that you have to have a kennel license if you have over 26 dogs in a facility over a calendar year. But there seems like a big jump between the 4 dogs, 1 cat versus the 26 dogs. I'm kind of wondering where that gray area is.
That must be something like, is this defined as a living space or is this defined as a business? I could see that being the difference between the two, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, what about service and emotional support animals? We only have the documentation law for the letter that's related to the need for service or emotional support animals by landlords. That's the only law we have when it comes to service animals.
So eligibility in Pennsylvania requires the handler must have a verifiable physical or mental health disability. But I'm 90% sure that I've heard you can't ask a handler what their disability is.
You cannot. You cannot. But that letter of medical necessity can be provided for things like hotel stays, landlords,
Airlines.
airlines, things like that. But that's why they have those things to validate that the dog is actually a service dog and not something that somebody just bought a vest on Amazon and said was a service dog. I understand why those laws are there. I'm somebody that is supposed to have a service dog, and Fitz was supposed to be a service dog, but he did not pass. He did not pass his test. That's just how it goes sometimes. This is just something to be said just overall. Don't put your dog in situations where they're going to be uncomfortable. Just don't do it. Don't take your dog to a crowded airport and force them to get on an airplane if they're going to be uncomfortable. It's not fair. When Fitz was a puppy, I took him to Texas with me one time, and he was little. He was like 3 months old, so he fit under the seat. But really, I just drugged him up, and he slept in my lap the whole time, and literally nobody complained. The people that were sitting next to me lifted their arms things on the airplane seats, and he just laid across everybody's lap the whole time. It was great. But that was still when he was in service training prospect situation.
Right.
Not after that. I would never do that to him now. He would hate it. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like these laws are there to protect our dogs, but other times I feel like sometimes they're just there to reinforce common sense.
Right. A few years ago, I was at a bar later at night, and there was a little puppy that was trained to be a service dog sitting under the bar stool. That I understand the possibility that you would have to take your dog to a bar, but it just seemed like it was out of place, and it seemed extra stressful for this puppy because it was a dive bar, and there's sometimes maybe not a reason you need to take your service dog out to certain places, especially a dog in training like that. Maybe that's not an unpopular opinion. I said it.
I'm going to side with you here just for a second, because if you're out just getting smashed, why would you bring your service dog? Because
Exactly.
you're potentially triggering alerts here, first of all, and you're also not being safe. So now you're not being safe to handle your dog, and that's just unfair all around. I think.
Exactly.
If you're doing stuff like that, either do it at home, you have your friends over, or go by yourself and don't take your dog.
Exactly.
What about vaccinations? In Iowa, you are only legally required to have rabies. I know we talked about rabies earlier, but some states actually require more vaccinations than just rabies.
Our recommended vaccines are parvo, distemper, bordetella. I know that's only if you're taking your dog to a kennel. I don't think that's required by law. I know that my friend in Pennsylvania does, is it tithers? That you can test the dog's immunity. Titers, yes,
Yep.
titers. That you can test the dog's immunity. So she does that. There's enough, I guess, leeway in Pennsylvania that she can do that and not get her dog regularly vaccinated. So we do have a little bit of leniency in that respect.
I think that's great, because I think that if you can show that your dog isn't immunocompromised, if you can show that they have the right level of protection in their system, don't over-vaccinate. There are a lot of vets out there that will tell you, yeah, take the titers. Okay, look, you're within the limits. They don't need the vaccination. Saves time and money and all the things. You're putting something else in your dog's body that they aren't necessarily going to break down or they don't necessarily need. So why do it? I think that if you have that kind of flexibility, I'm sure here in Iowa, since it literally says the core vaccines are, and it lists them, but it says to remain compliant with Iowa laws, you must have your dog vaccinated for rabies once they are 6 months old. That's it, literally. Now, there are other rules, like you said, like kennels, you have to have the bordetella and the distemper and the parvo and all that kind of stuff, but that's because of exposure. All right, do you have any other weird laws?
So one thing to note is it is illegal to leave dog waste on a property other than your own, and it is illegal to house a dog in a drum, barrel, refrigerator, or freezer. Once again, I guess if it's a law, then it had probably happened at some point. We do also have a puppy lemon law that sellers and breeders must post a notice informing consumers of their rights under the puppy lemon law.
Well, I just read a law that's kind of terrible. It is lawful for any person to kill a dog wearing a rabies collar when the dog is caught in the act of chasing, maiming, or killing any domestic animal or fowl, or when a dog is attacking or attempting to bite a person. So somebody could just shoot your dog.
Right. That's a scary
is crazy.
Law. Yeah.
That's so scary. Hopefully, now that you guys have been listening to us chat about this back and forth here for a while. I hope you understand why it's so important to read your laws, because I just read that one and I did not know that that was a law here in Iowa. And that makes me even more nervous now about having a reactive dog and walking around in my neighborhood.
Right.
Because if he were to, he never would. He's not that kind of reactive. He's run the other direction. But if someone was walking down the street and their dog started to attack somebody and the neighbor came out and shot the dog, that person would not be in trouble. That is terrifying.
That's heartbreaking too, because it seems like there's a lot of gray area or open room for interpretation.
Yeah, wow. That is absolutely insane. It's under chapter 351, in case anybody wants to look up iowa.gov, chapter 351. It literally says that. So this is why we had this episode. I know it probably feels like kind of daunting and really sad, guys, because I am tearing up because I am so upset about some of these laws. I mean, this just shows you like how inhumane the world is to animals. So make sure you are doing your research. Make sure you are looking up what your state laws are, and don't be afraid to ask questions and reach out to people like Lauren and I to look into this kind of stuff, because it is terrifying. It's terrifying. Oh my gosh. Well, on that terrible, sad note, what would you like to leave the listeners with?
The first thing, obviously, is know your laws, know when your dog's in the right, know when to protect your dog. But also, there's so many good dogs out at rescues and shelters right now that if you are looking to get a dog, please just look at your local shelter, look at a rescue, and try to save a dog's life. Thanks so much for having me today, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely. It is such an important thing right now. We really do need people out there volunteering, rescuing, all of the things. So definitely visit your shelter and see how you can help a dog in need today. And we will see you guys next week on Straight Up Dog Talk. Straight Up Dog Talk was created by Emily Breslin. It is edited and produced under the supervision of Straight Up Dog Talk, LLC, and Emily Breslin. If you're enjoying this podcast, follow or subscribe and be sure you don't miss an episode. And leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Looking for more honest and relatable dog content? Check out our sister show, Unpacked, with Jerry Sheriff and Madison Simpson. Thanks for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. See you next week.